Or visit hardtop.com.
Hey there, Roger. We're in commercial.
Or find us on Amazon.
Okay.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and FreedomSlips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, FreedomSlips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Stumbling down the road with Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff as she carries stones, digs holes, and wheels her shovels on her way. This road is the real path. It is never easy and never clear, but always entertaining. This journey has not been a seated event, as Bridgette walks, runs, stumbles, carries, digs, drags, laughs, fights, sings, prays, dances, kicks, screams, and oftentimes falls.
Hey everybody, this is Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff, your host. Yes, finally I have a new bumper. Anyway, I'm really appreciative because somebody on our network helped me with that bumper, and then I was able to donate the donation to our station. So anyway, this is Carrying Stones and Digging Holes radio show. And yeah, I love all those cows and chickens and yeah, awesome. Okay, so we're at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And you can go on to our website and look under the funding and find different ways that you can fund us. We are listener supported. Everybody here at the network, hosts and everybody, gives their time for free to bring you information you may have not have heard about. All of our hosts have lots of different ideas and thoughts and interests. And my show, you can find it on Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. If you look under the schedule, click on Schedule A, scroll down to the 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and click on the B. And if you click on the B, you'll find a page that has information about me and how to contact me. And we are going to be live until 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. All right. So I have a return guest, somebody that I really love his stuff and his channel. And he's been on before, so he's always got amazing things to talk about. And I was just watching the Flat Earth British Flat Earth guy, and they are translating these books that they have, and it's pretty incredible stuff. So I'm sure that Roger's been watching that kind of stuff as well. So Roger, hey, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Wait a minute. Before you go any further, no. I do not watch the Flat Earth stuff, and I do not care for that at all.
No, he's not talking about the Flat Earth stuff. They got these books, these ancient books that him and a group of people are translating. And
okay. That's all good. And here's the situation with Flat Earth. I know that people, they've been assaulting me forever because I won't agree to that the Earth is flat. I can see it's round from the space station. Now, I cannot disagree that at one time it's possible it was flat. I have no clue. But I can tell you one thing right now: the space station is there, and for people that just disagree with that, I can't. And there's nothing I can say to them.
Right. Well, yeah, and that's the thing. I think sometimes some of these people have titles like Flat Earth, British, or whatever, and it's not all really Flat Earth. It's actually, he has a new video on there, and they found this book that goes back quite a ways, and it has a lot of pictures, and it has lots of different languages and what the style of those languages writing were, different kinds of crazy statues. It looks like some free energy, type things that they have, batteries and stuff like that. There's.
You're not talking about Carl, are you? You must be talking about Carl. Carl Smith? No.
No. Nope. His name is Kyle.
That's all right. It doesn't matter. But Carl, I have a friend, Carl, who I know he is all over the internet looking at things and very, very good at finding things that people have missed.
Yeah.
He's been decoding all of the ancient temple drawings. Now, these were in the early days of the Egyptian explorations. They sent in people that could draw absolutely unbelievably, and the detail is phenomenal. So when we see them on TV and they show these pictures and stuff, nothing like what the detail these. I don't know, you call them scribes, whatever you want to call them, artists. They did these renderings long ago, at the early days of the exploration, that show things that we will never see now. And he's been picking up on them, and they are things about it. They sure look like electricity, and they look like things that we just have no clue about, really. And the reason we don't have any clue about it, we don't understand anything about our past, because, as you recall, I've been doing the research, Mudfossil University, and anybody that wants to understand this intimately, you have to go to Mudfossil University on YouTube. If you go there, there's all kinds of videos about the actual structure of the Earth and what it's made of, and what it is made out is biology. It's just a fact. There are creatures that are so enormous on this Earth at one time that the average mind just explodes, literally explodes with that confrontation. It's a confrontation. It's a physical assault on somebody's reality to hear that. I mean, I know that. But when you look at Morocco, if you have a Google Earth, which I'm sure you do if you've got a computer, go over the top of the Atlas Mountains and back out of there and look very carefully. You're going to see a dragon laying on the desert floor. So enormous. Again, it's so overwhelming to the senses. You've seen it, right, Bridgette?
Yeah. Well, watching your stuff, I came along your stuff. I mean, when you had the other channel as well, you had another channel before the one you have now, which is Mudfossil University. But you kind of opened the door for these other branches that I've been looking at, like what you're proposing and what you're showing. You have fact, DNA, and all this other stuff about what you're finding biologically, what you're finding, visually. And then it's opened up doors for me to look into other like mud flutter people, like John Levy, but he's doing architecture. He's going back, they find these books and pictures, and they show like architecture, maybe of the last, civilization in the architecture before the mud flood, right? And then us. And they say that, they keep popping up some of these architectural stuff, and they keep like eradicating it out of our cities. So we don't know anything about it. But there's definitely, like you said, people that, drew photos of what they were seeing. A lot of these cities, they didn't even have any people in them. I mean, comment after comment of some of this architecture in these areas. There's no trees, there's no nothing, and there's no people, and people are coming across these like cities before us, and we're, our, I don't know what to call it, like our species now, maybe, I don't know, but it wasn't that long ago in history. But anyway, you've opened
no, it absolutely wasn't that long ago. Absolutely not. There was things back just recently that are so overwhelming, the average mind, again, explodes. I have been getting things, Bridget, from people all over the world now, because this is exciting stuff, and these people are engaged. They're not just going in there, for a second or two. They're keeping an eye on this, because this is not only entertaining, it's got a lot more value in every other direction. But anyway, these people are engaged. They're sending me things, and I am getting maps, primarily maps from the Middle Ages up to like the early 1700s, that were so magnificently done. They showed the actual scenes. They're showing giants, they're showing dragons, they're showing the Atlas Mountains, which I am saying is the dragon. That's Morocco. And they show a dragon laying all the way across there, exactly as the one in Morocco. And then in some kind of text, which I could not decipher, which I found out what it was later, it's had a whole bunch of stuff. And I saw something in Dragane, something like that. And so I put out the feeler. I said, what does this mean? Somebody tell me. And there was about 4 or 5 different responses of, oh, it's this, it's that, and finally there was about 3 or 4 in a row that says, no, it is an early form of French, prior to the French that is known now. And it says, beware dragons in these lands. and you could see the dragon, you could see the fish, and then in the ancient texts, it's just phenomenal. It says in Isaiah, I think it's 27.1, it says that, well, here, I got to look it up just because I don't want to misquote it. You misquote God, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. Hold on a second. Okay.
Well, the thing that blows me away, I mean, the dragon blew me away when I saw that, but the thing that really, I think caught me off guard was the vagina caves.
Oh, yeah.
That, I mean, you look at it and you're like, that is like a total female parts. I got to tell you something. Not a shadow of a doubt. It was like,
well, there's no question. For some guys, but I've had geologists, they swear that it's just a natural formation. I am not kidding you. I'm not kidding you. So I come back with there is a seam that forms as the blastula, which is the ball that a fetus begins its life as, a whole ball of cells, just like a basketball. And if you poked a hole in that basketball and pushed it inside of itself, that is what happens to that blastula at a certain number of cells. I think it might be 64. I don't remember precisely. But at a certain amount, it collapses on itself and forms the abdominal seam, which goes right straight up the center of your stomach, up to your belly button, right up to your chest. And that is a welded seam. That is not a seam that was just the fabric growing. That is the seam coming together and fusing, which means it is not as strong as the surrounding tissues. Now, as you know, my contention is exactly what was written in every single culture, is there was a great flood. And that great flood was salt waters. And those salt waters protect flesh. They protect soft tissues. That's what's in your body. It's the same salt water. Only you got a little blood here and there, a little this and that. But it's the same salt water. So your body says, hey, this is all right. It's all the same for me. But your bones, different issue. Your bones, in your body, and I hope mine, are surrounded by a membrane that keeps them isolated from the surrounding environment of salts. And when you die, the membrane loses its efficiency. It becomes invaded by different processes that bring in these extremely aggressive little molecules, and they attack the calcium phosphates and so forth. And what they do is they break them down into something called source rock. And I won't go into all the chemistry, but it's an invasion, and it destroys the bones. It's exactly opposite to the bones. They go out and look for scrappy bones out in the dust. Well, those have no flesh. They have no organic material. They have these minerals that didn't get invaded because there was no moisture to transfer the molecules in to invade them. So the flesh became dry and particles and eaten by all the little bugs and things because, if it was dry, it was exposed to air. The stuff I have was never exposed to air. It was in the water. It became waterlogged in these salty solutions. And as the waters receded or whatever happened to them, I don't know, but it says the earth swallowed them back up. And I think it was like a year or so the flood was, something like that. But whatever it is, these bodily creatures, most of them, were floating in the waters. Now, those were the smaller ones. The gigantic ones, and I mean they were miles tall. I don't care what anybody says. That's a fact, and I can prove it. And they were standing, obviously trying to want to drown, but they might have gotten stuck in the mud, and I believe that's what happened. They their feet went down into the mud at a certain point in time, and then they couldn't move. They drowned or they starved, and that was the end of them. Now, what would happen to the body floating in that water? Suspended, like the guy standing there. Now, and why do there's always only 1 foot most of the time? I have some with 2 feet, but usually it's only 1 foot. But the other one, you can find it, although it is deep in the ground because the guy's trying to push himself up with 1 foot, and the other foot he's trying to pull himself up with because it's up high, and that's usually what happens. One is higher than the other. But anyway, the rest of them from the tendinous material, which if you go below your calf on your own leg and you feel your ankle area, it is hard as a rock. If it's, if you're in good shape, it's all tendons, very, very, very little meat. Tendons are the tough things in your body. They're strappy, they're tough, they're calcium carbonates with all these mineral inclusions in them. It's called, when they petrify, tendons become something called porphyritic limestone, right? And porphyritic basalts. Limestone, it's all white and clear white. No, it isn't. There's marine limestone, yes. Same thing, calcium carbide, CaCO3, no inclusions. And why is there no inclusions? Because the organic materials go into solution in these salt waters, and you end up with just these tough, scrappy shells and things, and they end up collecting as sediments and turning into limestone, white, clear limestone. You can see the shells in it if you look carefully, but that's what it is, white, clear limestone. Now, the limestone I'm talking about, totally different. It's all infused with minerals and fibers and all kinds of things. Just go look it up, porphyritic limestone, and you'll see the difference. Marine limestone, totally different. So, the point being is the guy's foot is in the ground. His ankle is sticking up out of the ground. He's a mile tall, 2 miles tall, 10 miles tall. I don't know how tall they got. But I can tell you that's not unusual at all. Miles and miles tall. And this was written by Enoch. He said this was all true. It was all going to happen, and it did. And then God said, you guys are done. And they ate everything on the earth. And I think they ate the dinosaurs. Because people say, the dinosaurs were actually gone by the time the flood that took out the giants. And I got more news for you people. The giant flood was not 65. The flood that killed these giants was recorded as 4,300 years ago. Now, that flood was not only the flood, the great flood that killed the giants. That flood was the same flood and the same layer it left that Alvarez claimed was from a concussion of a meteorite or asteroid that hit in the Yucatan. It did not hit in the Yucatan. There is no impact crater there. What is there is life. And that life, and I've seen the core drillings, I've seen everything, the sonograms, I've seen the whole 9 yards. And when they say shock quartz, it's not shock quartz. What they're looking at is lung tissue. And I see, it's all on my videos, I show it. And I guess I have the lung tissue right here, I can show you. It's not shock quartz. The other thing is, it was not 65 million years ago, it was 4,300 years ago, and it left a ring all around the Earth that had this iridium in it. And they said, oh, it's got iridium, it's had to come from outer space. Well, let me tell you, in your body, every single transition metal that exists is in your body. You have uranium, you have every single one of them, and you have to have them. You have iridium, you have gold, you have copper and silver, and every single transition element. And what they do is they transfer products through your bloodstream. You need those to be healthy. And I have a whole nother series on that too, because bacteria in your body creates enzymes. The enzymes create products that also create these or harvest these transition metals. And if you don't have those transition metals, I don't care what you put in your body, you cannot carry things around. Transition metals say, I'm going to take an electron and I'm going to carry you down using pH 7.45, and when we get down there, it's going to be 7.35, and that guy's going to want you more than I do now. And it gives the guy up. That's how it works. That's how oxygen gets around. That's how carbon dioxide gets fixed up. And they go into what they call carbonic acids. And that's in your blood. And they just carry it around. And the acid just means it's got, acids and salts. You got an extra electron or wants an electron. That's how your body works. Once it gets into your lungs, there are transition metals in your lungs, and I can see them in my mud fossils. They don't know about this in medicine. I can see all the things they missed in medicine in my mud fossils because I have the actual chemistry. So I'm looking at the transition metals, all different colored crystals in the lungs. And that's when they find these, like down in Arkansas, they got all these pockets of crystals and everything. Those are lungs. Those are lungs from giants. And they grow these crystals in the vugs, the voids of the lung cavities. And the reason they grow them in all these different colors and types is because they're loaded with these transition metals. And what the transition metals do is they disassociate these carbonic acids as they flow through the lungs and turn them into carbonic gases. And you blow them out. And then they do the same thing backwards, coming in to harvest oxygen and so forth like that. It's very, very, very... once you understand it, it's simple, but it's elegant. I'm telling you, it is an elegant system. And for anybody... sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's really how the body works, because I've been in medicine for a long time, mostly on the holistic end, but I have done Western. But I think they purposely leave out, just like the truth about, that pretty much everything is like dead giants everywhere and parts of them and what it's become. I mean, we're completely lied to even in the medical system about what the bodies are. And I actually, learned more from my native teachers about the body and that, it's like this amazing kind of machine that operates, perfectly. But my native teacher, we talked about this before, he used to tell me that the blood was crystals and that we are senders and receivers. And the same thing with the lung, right? We're taking in, we're receiving, and then we're sending out. we're constant. And if we didn't have the crystals in our blood, we couldn't be senders and receivers. And then we don't have a lot of charge. We don't have the battery charge, to run the electrical system if we don't have, plenty of nutrient in our bodies.
Well, I imagine you might have heard about the magnesium factor in the heart, in electrical pulses. And heart, they're looking into magnesium for having a benefit to being able to, necessary for some of the electrical activity, which is primarily cardiac pulses and so forth. But every single transition metal, and there is close to 100 of them, Bridget, and every single one, what it means to be a transition metal is that it's a normal atom has all of its electrons around the center, and people probably understand that. And then you get to what the very outside layer is. It's called a valence shell, and that's usually where the last of the electrons are. All right, well, in the transition metal, it's different. Transition metals, you go the same thing. You got the core, and then you go with a shell and another shell of electrons. It's all filled. And then all of a sudden, you got one that's not filled, and then you got the next one out. And that's not normally allowed. Normally, you have to fill them all up before you can go out. Well, having the transition metal be able to be constructed in that manner, it is able to hold on to another molecule with one electron. It's just barely holding on to the thing. And that's how it can carry it through the body. And then the body, your body changes pH from this where the heart is to your very extremities. The pH in your body changes. And that's how they pick up and deliver these molecules. And they come down through the arterial network, which is a wide open tube, has a zillion branches. And it just gushes all this stuff down through there. Bloop, 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 with your heartbeat, pushing, pushing, pushing. And in between that artery, there is a huge web, like a web of cotton almost, and they're little tubes and fibers that are blood vessels. And they pass from there to the other side of the extremity, let's say. And at that side, the vein sucks it all right back up to the heart and lungs to be regenerated and so forth. And those have valves. They can't go backwards. Now, I'm going to tell you something. This is almost impossible to believe, but it's true. Even if you look at modern-day radio, X-rays, and what do you call them, MRIs and all that stuff, you can see in the fingers of a hand that one side of the finger sends out the artery, and the blood squirts down there, and all along that side, it has webbing that goes across to the other side, and the other side of your finger is the vein side, which sucks the blood back up. So here's my statement. Your finger has one artery on the left and one vein on the right. In between is the blood vessels. That's all there is in your fingers. You look at any anatomical drawing that I can find right now, it shows that there's two arteries on the top, one on both sides, and two veins on the bottom, one on both sides. And it's not there. It's not true. It's not even right.
No, but that's right. I know, but that's the thing about medicine. It's fraud. It's like, I think it's probably might be one of the biggest frauds that we participate.
Can you even imagine that? That is so unbelievable. I'm telling you right now, look it up. Look up, because I've gone through it and I've shown it over and over. And because I had a guy attack me. He says, you're telling me that there's an artery on one side, there's a vein on one side. You're crazy. There's two of them on the top and two of them on the bottom. I said, ooh, maybe I'm wrong. And I looked it up, and I went through all the anatomical stuff and all of the actual autopsies and everything. And no, I was right. Because I could see them in my mud fossils. That's why I said it this way, because I knew it was right. And I'm thinking, boy, maybe the vast blood vessels change or something. But I did see the actual MRIs and X-rays of the blood vessels that are in today's fingers of a person today, and they only have an artery on one side and a vein on one side, and that is case closed. If some doctor can show me a finger that isn't built that way, I'd love to see it.
Yeah, no, that's one of the
medical.
Yeah,
they don't know the transition metals either. I've talked to them about that. No clue, absolutely none.
Yeah, well, the thing is,
they want to treat your symptoms.
Yeah. Medicine wasn't established to actually be factual. It was, and this is what I think happens. This is the reason I didn't go into Western medicine only. I'm more on the holistic front, but it's because it was like complete lies. But I think what happens is most people get involved with medicine. They get a certain, ways into it, and they've already spent like, $200,000 in student loans. And even if their mind says this is like, doesn't really make any sense, they just, shut that down and continue on to get their grease so they can make money and pay their loans off. So
they have to. They're slaves of the system, Bridget. I'm telling you right now.
Yeah,
I'm trying
because if you're thinking and you have critical thinking, I mean, for example, I do a lot of structural medicine with the body. So one of the things that I'm really always monitoring is the reflection of the brain in the feet. And I can tell all the emotional damage and trauma by looking at somebody's feet, and seeing what has happened to them psychologically, physically, because their body that's the furthest point from the brain. And so you can see the level of damage, whether it's like sexual, mental, emotional, physical, or it's chromosomal, different kinds of stuff. So I always watch and monitor the spine, but the spine is an actual hydraulic pump that moves back and forth.
I got to tell you something. Let me interrupt you because you touched on something that if I don't talk about it now, it's going to escape me. You talked about you see these things affected in the feet, right? Right?
I can look at the feet and determine what's happening.
All right. Yeah. Here's what I'm going to say.
Okay.
From my mud fossils, I know that the chemistry in the feet is completely different from the chemistry in the rest of the body. Now, so I started to think, why is this? Why do I see these things differently? Because you're built in blocks, literal blocks. And I have a thing that I just did about the brain. I had somebody send me a crystal brain. I did the autopsy on it basically, and it is in layers, just like a layer cake. And there's about 20 of them. And it's on my Mudfossil University channel, 4 or 5 videos back. But anyway, in the feet, they are loaded with metals and other types of minerals that are not as dense in the rest of the body. And I think that has a lot to do with why people have trouble with their feet and their legs and these scratching, because I have a terrible scratching on my legs sometimes. I can't stop. Now, so I looked in, I'm thinking, why would this happen? What is the difference? Is it something in the body that's different? And I started thinking it might be specific gravity. You almost always got your head up in the air and your feet down low. These are the things that are metals. These are heavier than, gold, obviously, very, very heavy. All the other metals are in that same specific gravity range. So, I don't know.
Yeah, gravity plays a role in it. I know that in a lot of the different, I could call them religions, but they're usually connected to really old types of medicine. So you look at like things like in India, well, physical yoga is considered medicine, right? Because, what are some of the things that they do? They do headstands. Why would you want to do a headstand for 3 hours? Maybe to drain all that stuff that's at your feet that's settled back down into your system to be usable.
How about all the people down in the Amazon? They all hang out in hammocks.
Yeah. So, the thing is like you have, there's physical, there's food related stuff that, can be considered medicine to get those metals. One of the other things too that I see, in people is people get structurally off pretty easily. And, in regular birthing, it causes serious brain lateralization, which causes structural malfunction from day one, from the day that you're born, because of the way that, people are born. It's really traumatic and physically tough on the mother and the baby. So, but anyway, what you start to see in people that could make a difference, like in their feet, is that their brain becomes disconnected in parts of their spine. So basically, if you get like an enlarged disc or a slip disc, or usually by the time you're age 40, you're going to have at least, 4 or 5 compressions where the vertebrae are enlarged and they're sitting on top of each other in a crooked way. And it's actually cut the nerve there, or it's pinching it. So the brain can't send a signal down the electrical, currents and structures to that part of the body to actually regenerate it. So there's a point where it stops being regenerated. So usually the legs are cut off, pretty early on, from the brain actually going down into those parts of the body and actually regenerating and cleaning, because most people have lower back issues, and I think probably would have had to happen in giants and stuff like too. I mean, especially if they had, mitochondrial, DNA. So they probably walking around a lot and whatever else they were involved in, they probably had spines that were similar to us, and they could have had, trauma to those parts of their spine. And sometimes all it takes is a fall, like a sharp fall, onto your tailbone or whatever, to twist the whole pelvic grid so that it disconnects from the brain, and the brain not being able to go down and actually clean up what's in the lower part of the body, or even recognize that there's stuff going on down there, or even regenerate it. Because the brain has to be able to pick it up to, send whatever's needed down there in order to restructure, refabricate, regenerate, clean up. And so if the brain can't get down, down those nerve passages in the communication.
Question.
Yeah.
Talking about the brain sending all to handling the whole situation. I'm with that to some degree, but the thing that I think is true, I mean, I can't see any other possibility other than that atoms themselves have intelligence, and and even possibly electrons. And the reason I say that is because they are just floating around all over the place, and they end up getting to the right place at the right time, and they work in quorums. They know what to do and when to do it, and they're virtually exactly identical to ant intelligence. I can't see any other possibility. It organizes life from a couple of little cells. I mean, you're just talking 2 cells. And they bump together, and it says, hey, what do you want to do? And it says, I don't know, talk to the molecules. What happens when we get in this condition? It says, well, in this condition, we got to start doing this mitochondria, whatever it is, until we get to a point where we get to 64 cells. It's okay, what do we do then? Well, we're supposed to, let me look this up. Oh, yeah, we're supposed to invert. And then what happens? And then we do this, and then we do that, and they look it up, and they're just doing it. So what do we need to do that? Well, we need some collagen, we need some keratin. You're going to have to go out there and get some calcium. He said, how do I do that? I said, talk to the bacteria. So what's the bacteria going to do? So the bacteria is going to create the enzymes. I said, what the enzymes? So the enzymes are the chemistry sets. And the enzymes are going to go out, and they're going to create everything we need. The bacteria is what's, and you have more bacteria in you than you have you in you. Bacteria. Right. You know what I mean? It's crazy. And they don't ever. You go to the doctor and you say, "How's my bacteria?" So I don't know. I don't know. There's nothing that's killing your bacteria. See, I don't have the bacteria. They have no database, Bridgette. You know that I've been screaming about this.
Yeah, well, I've been screaming about it for a long time. I mean, for example, like B vitamins are very important in the human diet. but it's bacteria. You know, it's stuff
Right, but
that can actually.
If you had a test where you give them your blood, and they run a test on, they say, okay, here's what you have in your blood for every single metal and mineral that's in your blood and the quantity percentages. Then you give them a fecal sample. They take that and they say, here's what bacteria is in your body, and here's what enzymes are in there, and they in other words, they're doing an analysis of what's in your body. There is no database of this now. There's none.
Well, okay, but you have to realize, like, no blood test is clean in medicine. Each tube that they take of blood has a different kind of chemical or gas in it.
That's okay. I don't care about that because, wait a minute, hold on. Hold on a second. Hear me out on this because this is really important. I don't care if today you have extra carbon dioxide and yesterday you had a little extra something else in your body. That's okay. If you had a database of 100,000 people and you knew that there was, you say, okay, who has skin condition issues? And you click it, and it drops 50,000 people, and it would. And then you would say, you keep clicking it down, and you would drill down until you would find out what bacteria was missing and what metals were missing in the vast percentage of those. I know some going to have a little extra this today and a little extra that yesterday, but you're going to get, I did this for my whole life. I understand how data falls into line, and there's no question whatsoever that you would come up with a norm of a person that did not have these conditions and had all of these things in his body, and you would come out with a norm of a person that had these conditions and did not have a certain series of things in his body. It's no question whatsoever.
No, I totally agree that there should be databases, but the problem is that they suit the material, you know, I'm sure you know this, they suit the material for their, you know, purposes.
Yeah, but if you go to the doctor and you say, what's the matter with me? You say, what's in my body? So I don't know.
Yeah, he doesn't know.
What are you going to do for me? You say, I don't know, take a couple of these and see what happens. That's what's happening right now, and I'm telling you, that's a fact.
Yeah.
They have no clue whatsoever. So they say, well, what are the symptoms? It says, oh, I got my wrist, I can't move it, it's killing me. So you got rheumatoid arthritis.
Right. So I always tell people that they're practicing medicine, and that's what their medical insurance says. So exactly. They're not doing medicine. It doesn't say that they know anything about medicine. They have a medical malpractice to practice medicine because they don't know anything, and they're not trained in anything. And I always I have a long-running joke with friends of mine, but we only go to the doctors if we have you know, a severely broken bone or we can't stop the bleeding. There's no other reason we go to the medical professional or doctors because we're more likely to get something from them at their place than to actually get well.
I know. I had an eye infection just recently, and I mean, I looked like I got hit about 30 times by Muhammad Ali. So my wife said, why don't you go to the doctor? I said, why do I go to the doctor? That's where all the sick people are. So I treated it with a little this and a little that. But, I put castor oil in my eyes, and it does a great job at soothing them. I had a real problem with my eyes. Just the irritation was absolutely horrendous. But anyway.
So the thing is like you, so we'll go back to the mud fossils, but I know that you on your, videos show lungs that people find, out when they're looking at different kinds of rocks or, things like that. And they also have hearts. The hearts are always like kind of some of the pictures that you have of hearts on the mud fossils are beautiful. They're purple and they have like, you could see the metals kind of like shimmering from the hearts. And these are real hearts of giants who lived probably before us, right? Before.
Yeah. Well, like I say, 4,300 years ago, most of them drowned. Now, the way, if you go back and you look up the history of everything, I dug into that as deep as anybody ever has. I'm telling you right now, the guy that you want to listen to is Velikovsky. and they destroyed him. They made him take the books off of the bookshelves, and it was on the bestseller list 11 weeks in a row. And the academics hated him so bad because of what he was saying. And he was basing it on things that were written in the past, not just guesses. And he had all of the stories on our past. And he said it was about... Venus was born 3,500 years ago, believe it or not. Venus was not here until 3,500 years ago. All of this is recorded. You've got to look up Velikovsky, Worlds in Collision. And this was when Venus was literally born from Jupiter. And I believe it was born from the big red spot vagina. That big red spot is exactly the size of Venus. And, we know that vaginas get big. And I'm going to tell you something else, Bridget. I don't know if you noticed the other day, I put one up there about tendon balls and, the tendon enthesis balls, how gigantic balls they are on Earth. Well, guess what? Saturn's moon, Iapetus, is a tendon ball. And I have a video showing it, and nobody can convince me that it is not. It is identical.
So how do you think it got up there, or how do you think it got there, or what do you think the process is of how?
I'm telling you, they're living creatures. The Earth is a living creature, no question whatsoever. And everything that I have found, every single thing that is in space is also from living creatures. There's not one single molecule that I can find that has not come from a living creature. Lava is the excretion of living creatures. It's literally anal excretions. I'm not kidding you. The guy's crazy. Good. You go up and start looking at my videos, and then you'll think you're crazy too, because it's just a fact. And they said the Earth was nothing but titans. And I'm going to tell you another thing. If you go and look up the Gospel, the Gospel of Thomas. Yeah, Gospel of Thomas. And it's like 114 sayings that they recorded that Jesus said. And look up number 80. And it says the Earth is a body. The Earth is a creature. It is a body. And then it also says that the person that figures that out, the Earth is not worthy of. I figured it out. I win. No, I'm sure they're not talking about me because I'm really not worthy of much. But this is what it is. The Earth is literally what they said in the past. They're creatures. Gaia, Uranus, Titans, Tiamat. They're all creatures. It's just a fact. You call me crazy, but that's just a fact.
With creatures with mitochondria DNA, right?
Well, here's the thing. I don't know. The ones that I have were creatures. Now, the Earth itself, I believe, is a living biological creature.
Yep.
And I don't know if it's a single biological creature, but that's what it was. It was originally the Gaia story. You have to look up these things because they're true. If you look up Hesiod is the one to look up. And look up the 5 ages of man. And then the 5 ages of man and theogony. If anybody wants to really get into this stuff, you should come to Mudfossil University and then just stay there. And you could, I got 600
Stay there.
Stay there for the rest of your life. I get 600 videos, and I put them out like a couple of times a day. Because there is so much that's misunderstood until you can understand that the universe is literally biology. It's biology. Every single meteor that hits this Earth has been alive. The Comet 67P is a tendon enthesis. The new one that they just found was Ultima Thule is a ligament. joint. I'm not kidding you. I know this for a fact. And it's common 67P. They went out and did the molecular analysis on it. And when they analyzed the particles that were in there, they just went blown away. And they said it's so heavily organic that they can't even give it a name. And I looked at the chemistry, because I understand the chemistry of the body. Because I do the chemistry of the same thing that's floating out there. I have the same thing that's here, and I look at the same chemistry, and it's exactly identical to the chemistry they reported on Comet 67P.
You know, I was just
let me just
yeah, go ahead.
When it gases off there, and you see all those comas coming out, the only reason that's coming out here, that is just like meat cooking. And it is the same gases. They're called aromatic aromatic hydrocarbons or something like that. They're carcinogens. They're uncooked meat smoke. It's the same molecules. And the reason is there's no oxygen out there to combust. So it shoots out in these jets of organic matter. And they said, yeah, it's organic. Sure enough, it's polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. All right, go ahead.
It's crazy. I mean, you know what I mean? The thing that you know, when people start to wake up and they start to look around, I have friends of mine that are always shocked because I send them stuff all the time about lots of different things going on, and they don't pay attention to any of it. And then there's this one day where they start looking at the stuff and going, oh my God, I don't know if I can handle this, because that means every single thing that I ever thought, saw, heard, you know, was a complete and total lie.
Just a waste of time. Time. Listen, all you could do is learn to repeat what you were told. Remember this. And they would say, just be quiet and learn. Just be quiet. And then, you know, well, how does this work? How does that work? I was one of those, how does this, how does that? And they would just say, just be quiet, you'll learn. Just keep reading, you know. And I said, well, what am I learning? I'm learning how to say what you told me. I'm not learning anything. And I'm going to tell you something else. Listen to this. Einstein, I'm seeing a big thing about, they're going to be putting a big thing about Einstein and Hawking, how marvelous they were. Well, let me tell you something about Mr. Einstein. E equals mc squared is absolute nonsense. If energy equals mass times the speed of light, I don't care what that is. It's just nonsense to square it because it's always the same number. But anyway, if E equals mc squared and light has no mass, that's what Einstein said, no mass, a photon, that's light, that means light has no energy. Right? Just think about it. It's so obvious, and they go, well, that's not really the real equation. We'll throw a couple of squiggly lines in there and it'll make everything all right. No, it doesn't. Energy has to have mass to have energy. It's just so much nonsense. Now, and I want to say one other thing that is, it just throws them for a loop, and they have no explanation whatsoever. I say, what happened? How does sunlight get to the Earth if there's nothing in between? Oh, it's a magnetic perturbation. I said, well, what's perturbating? Well, it's just shaking. It's like jelly shaking. I said, well, there's no jelly in the middle. How does this jelly get from there to this jelly? I said, if you're shooting out light, I said, well, it's solar radiation. I said, well, what is it made out of? Well, it's nothing. It's a wave of nothing. I said, no, there is no nothing. It's anything. The causality requires anything to have a cause. You can't have a cause by nothing. Nothing does nothing. And they just finally just shut down and start screaming.
Yeah, they revert back to their training, huh? When they got screamed at to shut the hell up, so then they scream at you to shut the hell up. Okay,
Shut up.
I know. That's the problem with me too. Is like I don't ever shut up. I even had a friend of mine recently who's kind of, you know, in the big truther movement, and he sent me a message on Facebook, basically saying to me that you know, it's dangerous to be putting out a lot of the stuff I do on social media, and that, you know, maybe I should really think about that. And I'm just like, I'm not going to like be afraid. I want to be out there asking questions. I want to take in as much information, from people that make sense to me. And I'm going to put that information out. Like, I'm not afraid. I mean, because if my brain can't work in this life or whatever I want to call it, what's the point? There's no exploration or adventure.
You're bringing up a good point. You're bringing up a huge, huge, huge point, because as you know, my research totally, absolutely, unequivocally backs up that Jesus is exactly as advertised. And I mean exactly. And the ancient texts, I have no doubt in my mind that everything that I have found supports them all the way back. And I mean, here's the thing. I don't think that the Earth started 6,000 years ago. That's the day one. No. I think, and if you read the text, Pistis Sophia, and all the deep, deep Gnostic texts, it says that this entire universe is a bureaucracy, an absolute bureaucracy.
Hey, Roger.
Yeah.
We're going to get ready to come into a break. And so
okay.
Can you remember that? And so we're going on break for 4 minutes. We'll see you back in 4 minutes. Hold that thought.
You got it.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Hello, all you good-looking people out there in Revolution Radio. This is Mario. I invite you to join me Thursdays at 6 o'clock for This, That, and the Other. It's a show about you, it's a show about me, but ultimately it's a show where we try to have a little bit of fun. We discuss important topics, and we do our best to be apolitical. So I invite you, put on your favorite pair of comfy sweats, your smoking jacket, and grab a beverage of your choice, and join me Thursday evenings at 6 o'clock for This, That, and the Other on Revolution Radio.
Enter into a world unseen on Raven Star's Witching Hour. You will encounter eclectic topics from the realm of spirit brought into our matrix of truth. With your host, the Solaris Blue Raven. Solaris will bring you an array of unique guests covering topics from ghostly spirits to amazing anomalies, covert technology, UFOs, and shadowy global events.
And that's right here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, Saturdays, midnight till 2 a.m. Eastern Time. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Let the magic rise.
From the astral realms to the physical plane, the halls of power to the walls of home, the multiverse to the innerverse, all will be haunted by the ghost in the machine. I am Steve Zeroloff, the ghost in the machine. Mondays, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Studio B. Exclusively here on Revolution.Radio.
How healthy are your arteries? Deteriorating circulation has a number of early warning signs. High cholesterol, high blood pressure, Fingers and or toes often go cold. Arms and or legs often go to sleep. Sharp diagonal crease in the earlobe. Short walks cause cramping or pains in legs. Memory is not as good as it used to be. Ankles swell late in the day. Chest pain after physical exercise or emotional stress. If you experience even one of these symptoms, your circulatory system is crying out for attention. Extendivite is a natural solution to help improve your overall health. Extendivite is not your average heart tonic. To order, call 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com or find us on Amazon.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and FreedomSlips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, FreedomSlips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Hey everybody, this is Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff, your host of Carrying Stones and Digging Holes radio show on Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And yes, we are listener supported, so you can go on our website, look at the funding page, and see how you can help support us. Also, while you're there, click on schedule, Studio A, scroll down to the 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And you'll see a B, click on the B, you'll see a bio of me and also contact information. And we are in the second hour with my guest, Roger Spurr, who is the operator and founder of Mudfossil University YouTube channel. And he has lots of unbelievable and amazing and brilliant and scientifically correct information. He was talking about he had 600 videos on there now, and with a wide range of really amazing information. So what do you want to start the second hour on? You want to finish up what your thought was, or you got some
all
other...
I was thinking about before was, and I can't remember how we started it because I sort of get to the rambling point quite often. But the way I see the universe, and the way Jesus says the universe is it's a bureaucracy. I mean, a literal, true bureaucracy where the earth is not 6,000 years old and just happened. It was apparently what is said in Pistis Sophia. You familiar with Pistis Sophia, Bridgette?
No, you were, last time you were on, you were just starting to travel down that road, and you had somebody...
Let me go down that road, because
okay.
I'm going to... Now, I don't know if it's true or not. I have no clue. But let me just preface this whole thing by saying that as I found the dragon, the fish, Isaiah 27.1, in that day, the great and mighty sword will, kill the dragon and the Leviathan. It says it right there in the text. And everything that I have read backs up exactly what I have found. It's very, 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 very stunning. And it's pretty damn scary, to be perfectly honest with you. Because as you start reading Revelations, all the things that are about to happen, and I think they are about to happen, it is damn scary. But the whole story of this thing is it's a bureaucracy that you have to have authority to go out and start your universe. And you have to have a partner and all this. And what happened was Pistis Sophia decided on her own, for some reason, without her partner, to start this universe. And when she did, she literally stole the power, the light. It's the light power, and this is exactly what it says. It's the light. She stole it. And she created this universe on her own without any authority. And her son was Yaldabaoth. All right? He was the first god here. And he was sort of tyrannical. Oh, I'm the only guy. You just, no other gods before me. And I had a whole lot of things that you wouldn't normally attribute to God. And Pistis was ashamed. And apparently this was a real disaster. And it went on from there. And I believe what happened, all these crazy things happened. And then I believe what ended up happening was God came, the real God said, okay, this is it. He sent his son, Jesus. He said, go down there and straighten this thing out. The guy went nuts. And look at what happened. They're all doing all these crazy, insane, vile, terrible, immoral, ungodly, vicious things all over. And it's still going on today. And they came down and they killed him. He thought, as far as I'm concerned, I don't know whether Jesus realized he was going to end up the way he ended up or not. How could you know? This is something that puzzles me terribly, whether he understood that or not. But the end result is he realized, or this was all the one big plan in the beginning. I'm trying to learn. I'm going to tell you that right now. Is that at some point he said, I'm starting to fire. I'm going to start people to think, and then it take a couple thousand years to get their minds working. But, you got to start off somewhere. How do you get this thing moving? You can't, I have absolute proof, absolute, undeniable, unimpeachable, unequivocal proof. And I can't get the people that are supposed to be the ones educating us to allow me to present it to them. It's a fact. That's a fact. Yale University, Professor Derek Briggs down there, I presented this to him 5 years ago. And he said, oh, you have to get DNA, and you got to get this, and CAT scans, and all that. So I'll do that. So I did. He still won't look at it. Well, I says he looked at it. There's still nothing here. Well, what about the DNA? Oh, it's crazy. You don't know what you're doing. I said, what about the anatomy? What about this? No, go find somebody that knows rocks was his last email to me. And that was not long ago. And that goes 5 years, and I'm just fed up with it. So, it's the way it is. Now, if we're going to be in touch with our reality and maybe our eternity, that's the way I'm looking at things, is eternity. Because right now, that's all I care about anymore. After seeing what I saw, and what is the possibilities if you don't get to the right place in eternity, I don't want that. I do not want that. And if you look up Enoch and all that, you're going to find out that when I say scary, you don't know what scary is. And when you take this into account, everything that was written about was dragons and this and that, and who knows I don't know anything about this now. I'm so lost now, because who kidded who? Who stole the information? Well, all I know is that there was the Gnostic texts, and they were very, very significant texts, and they were the words literally of the people of the times. Jesus and all his disciples, they were those people's words, and they were removed from the canon texts, which means the text that the church recognizes as valid. So what does that mean? In 300, 400 AD, somewhere around there, they said, we got to make this all standardized. People are thinking this, thinking that. Well, they took all those out and got rid of them. They said burn them, and people had to burn them. And if you got caught with them, they would kill you. Well, they were hidden, the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Nag Hammadi text. That was 1,700 years ago. Now, stop and sit down and think, because what I'm going to tell you, to me, is just unbelievable. It's 1,700 years ago. These are the texts. Now, you go to 1945. They're discovered. Both at the same time, but just like they popped out of the ground. End times texts. 1945, the Jews are just coming out of the concentration camps and getting their own state. And these end time texts are being put forward. Now, that's pretty damn scary to me. How could that come up 1,700 years the same year? Two separate findings, just accidental, that are both relating to this sequence of events. Now, I'm going to tell you something that I don't normally talk about, but I have decided I'm going to have to come forward with this because people are not listening. When I found the giants, I've talked about this before, but now I'm going to make a point of talking about it because it's true and it's factual and it's relevant and it could have eternal consequences. When I found the giants, and I knew they were giants, and there was no question they were giants, I started searching on giants on my computer, just like and a little this, a little that, and all of a sudden a thing popped up just like a response to I don't know what, and it said these things are for you to see and for others as a test. And I said, whoa. And I started digging through everything to try to figure where that came from, and I never could find it again. And when I tried to come back to it, it was gone. And then everything I saw. And nobody would listen. And I mean nobody, not my family, not my friends. And I mean, they took it as an assault. And I was fighting. I'm telling you, I was fighting. And I still am. And it's a little tough, but you know, you just got to do what you got to do. But these things were real and factual. So this is pretty serious. Now, when I started to take that into account, these things are for you to see and for others as a test. Nobody's passing the test. Now, if that's the real test, I don't know. All I'm saying is these things happen. Now, I start looking back, and I start going into the Bible and looking at what it says about teachers and what it says about this and that. And here's what it says, Peter 2:2-4. It talks about, here's exactly what it says, Peter 2:2-4. In their greed, these false teachers will exploit you with tales they have concocted. The long-standing verdict against them remains in force, and their destruction does not sleep. For if God did not spare the angels when they sinned, cast them into hell, delivering them in chains to be held in gloomy darkness, now listen to this, until their judgment. Right? When they get judged, we get judged. And as far as I'm concerned, they are out of gloomy darkness. It says right here, they are being held in hell, delivering them in chains to be held in gloomy darkness until their judgment. Well, as far as the light of day, they are there. And as far as the light of mind, anyone that has the eyes to see understands that they are there as well. So, I'm going with judgment. And I think it's time to pay a little attention. Right, Bridgette, what do you think about that?
Well, I kind of think about some of the similar things, you know, kind of different avenues of medicine and just other things, how things don't work the way that most people think that they work. And I think that, you know, more and more, I think that the hell is in your mind. Do you know what I mean? Like hell is when you're asleep and you care about consuming and just a lot of, you know, of the regular things, and you go, you know, to the regular doctors, and you go and do all the regular things that, you know, mainstream people do. And if you don't do it, you know, they discredit you and kick you out, because I've had that happen as well. I've even, like yourself, I've had colleagues who have actually come to, like, say, a meeting that I was holding, and that had a, you know, higher ranking than me in say medicine, and totally come to my meeting and tell people not to listen to me and totally discredit me. So I've had that kind of stuff before. You get used to it after a while. But this is how they, you know, how they get the thinking out. But for me, you know, more and more I think about things like, for example, maybe you and I right now, we think we have this body, and we think we're interacting, and we think we're talking, you know, in English, and we're talking about things. And then sometimes I think maybe we're just two atoms that, you know, have come together and we're vibrating, right? And we're communicating in an atom way in some, you know, bigger being's body, you know, like maybe in their toenail.
Absolutely. I can see, no question that the God is everything. Well, the universe is everything to us, right? Our universe is where we are. So that is our God, which it means the ineffable, the entire thing is God. And then he's going to have some, you know, people that are doing things like, and it says there's 12 saviors that run this particular place. I mean, I'm telling you right now, you read Pistis Sophia, it'll blow your mind. There's tyrants, there's good rulers, there's 12 saviors, and they have regions and branches and zones and deacons, and it's a bureaucracy that you just can't even imagine. And Jesus is the top guy in this, from the ineffable, which is all of us. So we're all part of God, and Jesus is his son. So we're really all sons of God and bits and pieces of God. The same thing as your toenail is a part of you. You have to be part of the whole. So you're actually somehow in communication with God, just as your toe is in communication with your head. You know what I'm saying? And
yeah.
It's complicated. It's scary.
It is. You know, I always relate things back. I've had a lot of people don't believe in them, but I've had a lot of experience with extraterrestrials, and I'm not just talking about, you know, UFO. I'm talking about like full-on physical experiences. And so I always tell people about like Men in Black and how it's probably more real. You know, even though it's like this funny comedy, it's actually probably more real than we have any idea. You know, where they have these crazy different kinds of, you know, beings, and you know, there's this one part that I always think about my own importance, like how really important am I? And it goes back to this locker scene where they're trying to figure out, they're going down, trying to get, you know, Kay's memory back or whatever. And they open this locker that they found, and there's like this whole civilization of these little beings in the locker that are worshiping the watch, because it's the light, you know, it's the light bearer, the light giver. And he has to put the new watch in there to take the old watch because it's part of the code. And I think about like how, like we might just be a small system in a, we may just be like, think we're more important than we are, but we may be like an atom in some, you know, giant's toenail, right?
Well, I agree that there's so much more that we don't understand. And once you start, like I said, you start reading Pistis Sophia, if that is correct, and it seems to have correlations to all the other texts that I've read. And I mean, I've read them all. You read Ovid and what's the other one? I guess it's Ovid and the Metamorphosis. And there were just gods everywhere. There's just gods everywhere. Every town had a god. But there was a supreme God. And on Earth here, it appears that they just got out of control and started just doing insane, crazy things. And, you know, mating with animals and doing all these, just, it's really just so bizarre. It's hard to speak about. Because if you look into the age of heroes, and, you know, like, I forget who it was, they cut her head off. I guess it was Medusa. They cut her head off, and of course Medusa could look at anybody and petrify them, and that's a fact. That I can see there, those are petrified creatures. You saw that video, right, that I have about the petrified creatures?
Yeah, well, and this is the thing is, I don't have a shadow of a doubt I had a teacher that taught me a lot about the beings that were like half human and half animal type creatures, that were also came before us, that they were real. They were like some kind of, species maybe they put here or whatever else, or they got it wrong. And so they started, removing them, eradicated them, probably with the mud flood or something like that. But I have no shadow of a doubt that beings that were like half human, half snake, or also beings that had incredible powers of some sort were totally fact.
Well, you have seen the Naga, right? You saw the video about the Naga?
Yeah.
That's a fact. There's no question that's a Naga head, which is from the Naga, the white Naga, I'm pretty sure is what it was. And there's, we also have the no-toes. You saw that, I'm sure, right?
The no-toes? Yeah.
Yeah. And those are just gigantic feet where the toes are totally encapsulated, just like it was a shoe, but it's all biological. And inside there's metal components and springs, and you saw all that stuff, latches and springs.
Yeah, because it was like almost like an organic, mechanical.
Organic cyborg. It's an organic cyborg.
Yeah.
Now I was watching something. I forget what I was watching, but.
Oh, and by the way, this is material out there for listeners because Roger and I are on our own mind melding Spock tangent right now, but he has all this stuff on his website of all this scientific stuff and every little thing that he's talking about. And he has done studies on the DNA of the giant fingers that he found that look just like giant fingers. And he has the DNA and MRI results from it. And it was 100% human mitochondria, which means that on the mother's side that it was definitely humanish. Yep. So anyway,
no, it's 100% Homo sapien mitochondrial DNA in two regions. There was cytochrome B and the D loop, 100 base pairs in each region. So it's not just and this was done with ancient protocol DNA tests. It took a few months to do. It wasn't a swab or anything. And I extracted it personally with, very clean tools and the whole thing, the way you would do it in the operating room, and not on the surface like a swab or anything. I drilled right into where the arteries are, where the blood is, because I understand where it is. It wasn't just something I took a little slip of something that could have been anything. No, I knew where the blood was. I took that. And the lab said it was dense for ancient DNA.
Yeah,
and this was done by Helix Paleo Labs.
Yeah, so Roger and I aren't just like, going off on some crazy, tangent that he actually has proof. Okay, so talk about that cyborg, that organic biological cyborg. You were going to talk about that.
Oh, yeah, they're all over the earth, and they are just enormous. The feet are literally from these giants that I've been talking about that can be up to miles tall. And the ones that we found in Missouri, one of my people that I work with, Tish, found, and listen to this. She is a fossil deal. It's her site. I think it's Optical Awakenings, and she was a crystal dealer. Not crystal meth. Regular crystals, and she. Is into this. She's got microscopes and all this. But anyway, her husband saw something I was doing and says to her, he says, you should see this guy. He's doing these mud fossils. And he says that in 15 minutes you could find the mud fossils. So she says, well, let's go take a look. So they go out. 15 minutes later, she found these. I'm not kidding you. It was 15 minutes. And it's a new species. It's an ancient creatures. And she has the feet. They look... They're absolutely flawless, and she has many of them, not just one or two. And she's got actually a full leg from the calf down. And it's in a state of decay where you can see inside the foot and how it's structured inside. It is nothing like ours. It has circular torsion springs with little straps that pull, and there's like two of them in a row, and then the toes come out in the front of that. So you have the toes can flex up, and when that does, it starts to bend these two torsion springs in a row. The first one flexes, the second one flexes, and then they return in that same manner forward. So it does the same job as our tendons and in our body. So it was like a prototype or something, I don't know. But you can see them. You saw them. They're bolted right in there, literally bolted in there with these springs. And on the ankles and going up the leg, they're like pins that just bolt the tendinous material, which is very, very strappy and white and flat little boards almost. And then in between them is the fleshy material. It's very strange.
Yeah. So, yeah, just so for listeners, so these are things that are being found all over, and they're biological material. They look humanoidish, or in some cases are human, have mitochondria DNA. So how big, and these are like just different kinds of, I kind of want to put this in a way where it doesn't terrify people, but it has become apparent that not only are there different extinction levels, but it's become apparent that their extinction levels come a lot more faster within, several thousand years. Even some people think even every couple hundred years, maybe in some cases. But that these are beings and people that have been left behind, and that they've kind of turned into stone a little bit, or mud fossils. And they're scattered everywhere because we're basically living on mounds of old civilizations and humanoid and non-humanoid type beings, and definitely for sure giants. And I know this is really hard for people to wrap their heads around, but it's pretty apparent now.
I can clear this up a little bit.
Yeah.
I left something hanging before.
Okay.
All right, here's what I have to talk about is the pre-flood, the flood, and after the flood, up to our time. Now, the pre-flood was the giants were, and I'm going by Enoch and the Bible and the things that were written, not only there, but in other cultures too. I believe the giants, and I know they are just miles tall, they had to eat. They were eating something. And they ended up eating everything on the face of the earth, is what it says. And they ended up eating all the people, and they ended up eating each other and drinking each other's blood. And trying to find all the little animals they could find to eat. They were probably eating dinosaurs by the bowls full. Because a bowl full of dinosaurs wouldn't do much for one of these guys. But anyway, they ate everything. And then God said, this is it, case closed, boop, flood. So now what happens? Whatever was left hiding in the crevices and was still alive, the animals and creatures and humans, because there was giants and there was average-sized people. I got them all. I got them all, and they're living in the same hole as far as I can find. They're coming out of the same hole. Now, this is after the flood. These are wet, salt-invaded flesh. So it begins to mineralize and harden up. And that's when they dug out all their caves out of these big, huge things. Petra is nothing more than a big mass of flesh that they dug through and made their fancy little facade on it and dug it out inside and made the treasury in there. And if you go into that treasury and look up on the left-hand wall, I believe it is in there, there's a couple of holes that are drilled just into the wall. And you say, what the hell are these holes for? If you look at them, they are in where the blood, you can see, is very red in that area. And red blood flows. Black, dark blood and the yellow blood is more on a ferrous oxide of the O2 variety, which is hard. The O3 variety is the red blood iron. And that's the stuff that moves around and particulates and rusts. That, and it flows. They drill holes in these things where, because I could tell, they did it a lot of places. They drill holes where the blood veins, where the blood arteries are, either the arteries themselves were the holes, or they drill into the hole if it runs sideways. And that's the case in the Treasury. The artery is running sideways down the wall, so it doesn't have a hole to drain out where they could deal with it. So they drilled holes into the sideways hole so that it would drain that blood out of there, so it wouldn't be leaking all over. If you look in these places, you'll see exactly what it is. And when they were wet, right after the flood, they could do this with their fingernails. They didn't have it, they were chisel, brass tools. No, they could do it with a stick or their fingernails. I'm not kidding you. And you could see they have shovel marks in it and everything. Fingernail marks and big handprints looks like stuck into a marshmallow on my face.
Yeah, what's interesting is like you tell people you could find a mud fossil, or like a human mitochondrial giant DNA human body part anywhere within 15 minutes. And I live out here in the desert in Reno, and we have a lot of rock outcroppings. We have a lot of places to rock climb and stuff like that. But I can just go out in the desert. And me and my friend Ryan, we've been doing it a lot, going out and looking at stuff. And we're looking at like rocks in a whole different way. I mean, we found this one rock that we weren't sure exactly which organ it was, but when we looked inside of it, you could see where there's definitely two circular traffic highways that are coming down into one big area, right? And we weren't sure it was like a heart. We thought, well, maybe it couldn't. So I call it gallbladder rock now because, and it's different. It has it looks kind of yellow.
Let me ask you, usually when you have a heart, you will see there'll be like a stripe running across it. And there'll be one, and it'll be white, and there might be usually it'll be white, and it'll be like a band that runs straight across, and there might be some black dots in that band, and then there'll be another band that runs off at a 90-degree angle, same looking color, only it's thinner, and that's the right and the left ventricle walls.
Right.
No.
Yeah, so we look all the time, and so this gallbladder rock looking thing, which if you look at it, the part that's kind of broken away, and you look inside of it, it's like pretty shocking that there would have been some kind of, circular tube passageways, whether they were veins and arteries. It doesn't really look like it. It looks like it was probably something else, like, maybe a gallbladder or something like that. But the rock is, bigger. I'd say it's probably, the size of 12, adults. Put together. That's how big this rock is. And so you think about, I'm just telling listeners, you see rock outcroppings, go there and take a look, because, there are going to be things in the rocks that are not normal. Like you'll see skin serrations. This one rock, we were just blown away, with what kind of different layers of tissues that we saw in it, and how it was cut away. And it looked totally like, fossilized tissues. And you could see where
a layered intrusion. That'd be a layered intrusion. Now listen to this. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I did it or not, but I was gonna. I think I did one on it. I did. Layered intrusions. Now here's the deal with layered intrusions. Layered means layers. And you see them, they're black, they're white, then black and a white, and then a brown, and then another layer called chromatite. Chromatite is called chromatite. And it is fascia. You look it up and you just put in chromatite into your Wikipedia, and you're going to see this fabric-looking stuff, and that is the fascia. So a layered intrusion is the muscle connective tissue, fascia, layer of blood, and they're just multi-layered tissues, just like you were just talking. Now, these layered, which obviously layers, intrusions means they're not supposed to be there. They say, why are these here? They say, no, I don't know. They're just here. Well, they're a dead guy. It's a dead guy laying there that was gigantic. And guess how big these things are? Some of them can be thousands of square miles.
Yeah. Well, that's
Now,
the thing about this rock was so shocking was like, it was like I said, like 12, good sized adults, maybe the size of it. And it would have been some type of organ, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Maybe like a gallbladder or something else, like.
that's not even big, Bridget.
I know, but this thing could have eaten me. It could have picked me up off the ground and swallowed me whole.
I know. There's tendon balls that you can't even see with your naked eye that are bigger than that, much bigger than that. It's so overwhelming, and that a person has to come up to the Mudfossil University because nobody else was talking about this. And here's the other issue why this is not being moved forward, because it is so spectacular that people will assault you, and immediately the people that are hearing this, this guy's nuts, what a jerk. I could just imagine what they're thinking. And if they go out and tell somebody that and don't have any evidence, I have the evidence. I don't care to assault me. I don't care, because there's nothing you can say to challenge my evidence. Nothing. Zero. So I win. Case closed. But
that's how I feel. That's how I feel about medicine and stuff.
But they're going to beat you up. They're going to say you're out of your mind. Well, yeah, you would have to say that to somebody. But if you got the evidence, you got the evidence. So
what's shocking is a lot of people, I don't know if it's the food they eat or the vaccines or what, or just, like the programming and training, because we're kind of, we live in like cattle feedlots is how I look at it. And how cattle are pushed through, the gate opens, buzzer or some kind of light, and the cow knows it goes through to the next one, and then the next one and the next one. And so I kind of look at like being born here in our development kind of like a cattle feedlot. Like we're only in the structure that they tell us that we're in and allow us, to move forward and however we interact with it. But I don't understand why so many people can't deal with things like mud fossils. I mean, I don't know if it terrifies them. Even some of the medicine work that I do, like communicating to people, they just go like deer in a headlight, and they can't even assimilate the information that I'm telling them because it's so far off, anything that they've ever, dealt with. And I don't know if we have some switch or programming that just kind of shuts us off.
Yeah, we do. We do, absolutely. I
the overwhelm switch?
Yeah, no, I looked into this closely because this was more mysterious than anything else I found was the human brain. It's just unbelievable how you can put something in front of somebody's eyes and they can say, no, that's not there. It's not there. I'm sorry, it's not there. And I get this from every side. It's not just the people in academia. It's the people that love God, too. The people that hate God say, all that stuff isn't there because we hate God. The people that... Anyway, people have a mindset that is stuck. It's stuck, just like you said. Once you got it, you can't ungot it.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Yeah, once you see it, you can't not see it. You can't stop seeing it.
When you were talking about getting programmed, this is funny. I'm looking at this thing about mice the other day and how they, I don't know why I was doing this, but how they think and how they try to experiment with them. So they're talking about these mice that they put in this little box, and they would ring a bell, like Pavlov's dog, and the mice would run out, and they get in front of this doorway, and it would take 6 seconds. I didn't shut you off, did I? No. It takes 6 seconds for the door to open. So they wait in front of the door, 6 seconds, beep, the door opens, they go in and get fed. So they do this for, I don't know, a month or something, whatever. And then they take the door away. And they let the mice out. Bing, and the mice run out, and they run up to where the door was, and they wait there 6 seconds without the door there because they were programmed. So, I mean, that's just hilarious to me. And I think that's the way people are, because you cannot confront another person with this evidence. And I know exactly what happens to them because I've seen this, and there is biology that they've done. You react to this as an assault, as a literal assault, and people will actually literally shake, and they will stutter, and all of those things that happen to you when you are in that position of, you little son of a bitch, don't get away from me or I'll pop you one, that kind of thing. It's like, it's a physical reaction.
Like a repulsion, like a chemical repulsion.
Reaction. I get it too. I'm not immune to this. When somebody attacks me, I get it right now. I'm going to tell you, that's a fact. I get pissed off. It's just like anybody else. And when somebody denies reality to me, and I show them reality, and they deny it, and then they start attacking me. Well, but I know I come into other people's regions in that manner, but I have to, because they just ignore you if you don't. So what do? You go in, say, with both guns drawn, say, look, you morons, if you can't see this, you're fools. And then I walk away. And, let them attack me back, but they won't. They can't, because there's nothing they can say.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is, I think sometimes you just got to, one of the things, like I had a really harsh interaction a couple of weeks ago, because I do a lot of healthcare work, online, trying to help people, to understand what's wrong with them biologically and what they can do and nutrients and, other kinds of ideas and thoughts. And I remember I made a lady really mad, and she knows that I'm not a doctor, right? Probably with all my education, I'd probably end up having 2 doctorates, but it might not be in medicine. But she's like, starts yelling at me, are you a doctor? Because she's lost it, because she doesn't really want to have personal responsibility for her health and do the things that she needs to do. And she'd rather listen to her doctor and take the pills. And so then you question yourself, well, why did she even set up an appointment with me anyway? And so she starts screaming at me, like, are you a doctor? And she's just totally yelling at me and like totally losing her SHIT on me, blah, 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 blah. And then when she's all done, I said, no, I'm not a doctor, and I never really would ever want to be one. So because I don't want to be like stuck in that kind of programming, kind of a thing. And I said, you really have to take responsibility for your own health. Well, anyway, she like totally really flipped out and then hung up on me, and then sent me like, about 12 really nasty emails about, about reading me my personal inventory. And so sometimes you have to be really calm in the face of being out in the public and trying to help, educate the public, kind of in a new way of kind of thinking. I mean, even if it's mud fossils or, history.
I tried that for 6 years. And what do after 6 years of saying, hey, I got mud fossils, I got DNA. Sooner or later, you got to turn around and say, hey, you fools, you are frauds. You people are frauds.
Yeah, and then you do them
wrong. It's your job to look at the things that are presented to you if they are factual. I'm not presenting you a pie in the sky, and you are refusing to examine it for reasons that are against students' rights.
Yeah.
It's called fiduciary failure. It's a gross neglect to a vulnerable person that has to put their faith in somebody to act in their interest, and that is not happening. And that means there is legal recourse for that, and I'm sure that's going to come to happen if this continues much longer.
Well, but the good part.
Thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars for what they think is real information that is reliable, that somebody would take the interest to verify it's reliable. And that is not the case.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is people that, like yourself or me or a lot of other, brilliant people that are out of the box. I mean, what happens is you confront those people, authority and power, and you say, look, this is where there's incongruencies or whatever else. And then you end up beating your head against the wall. And then what you do is about face, and then you decide to educate the public yourself.
Yep,
yeah,
I agree.
Which is way more effective.
But Bridgette, you're missing the whole point here, my friend.
No, I get it.
No, hold on. Here's my issue, is they are selling information. When I was in business, if I sold fraudulent, fake, or diluted information, somebody would sue me.
Yeah.
I would be sued.
Yep.
I would be sued. I couldn't get away with that. They can't walk away from that responsibility. It is their responsibility for the kind of money that they charge, and they are so directly impactful on that student's future ability to deal with life, first of all, secondly, to make a living, and to repay them for this knowledge that is fraudulent.
Yeah. Well, that's why they created bonding and insurance systems. So
yeah, but I don't think they have it. They don't feel they have any fiduciary duty. They don't feel that
because the insurance company protects them. So if they get individually sued,
by multiple entities in that realm, that their response, because I brought this up and I said, you people are going to get sued. You're going to get a class action lawsuit at some point for total. It's a systemic thing. I've been put on. The first time I interacted, with a little bit of questioning, I was put on an academic spam list, and I know I was told by people, I can't verify this for a fact, that I am on a blacklist and nobody will talk to me, and nobody does. So I imagine that's true. However, it's just not right. It's just not right.
But usually, one of the things I've learned in medicine and medical academia and stuff like that is that they insure the people, so that way no information ever gets out. If they get sued for any reason, there's always going to be a non-disclosure agreement and a payout. And when that happens, when the people accept the payment, they can never talk about it ever again, and nobody ever knows what the lawsuit was really about, what happened, what were the chain of events. So this is how they hide a lot of this stuff, is insurance companies are kind of like the brokers of hiding the disinformation legally, and the attorneys, and a lot of times the judges. So I just want to, we're coming into the last 10 minutes. And so I'm talking to Roger Spurr, and he is the founder and operator of Mudfossil University YouTube Channel. And he has been my guest today. Also, you're listening to Carrying Stones and Digging Holes radio show on Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And right now we are running a promotion special for the radio network. And you get two for $100 US donation. You can either get 2 Silver Eagle coins, or you can get 1 Silver Eagle coin and 1 seed pack, or 2 seed packs. So anyway, help us through the weekend so that we can, keep our shows up and running. Okay, so anyway, is there anything else that you want to talk about for the last 9 minutes, Mr. Roger?
Well, anything you want to talk about. I like talking about anything, really.
So what do you think?
Let's talk about this. How about this? Let's talk about global warming.
Yeah.
All right. Everybody's talking about global warming, and it's all related to carbon dioxide. Well, I'm not saying carbon dioxide is good by any means. I hate it. I hate fossil fuels. I hate digging in the earth. I hate fracking. But that is not the reason that the earth is heating up. The earth is heating up because the earth is spinning through the ether that is in space. And the ether in space is the particles that are in space, and the entire solar system is heating up. Now, consider this. We are being ripped through the Milky Way, on an arm of a Milky Way, our solar system. It's not just sitting here stagnant, which means it's going to be going through different zones and spaces and different densities of particles. There's particles in space. It's not empty. They're just totally wrong about that. It's called ether. And those particles can get denser or lighter. They are the particles coming from the sun in every luminous body. Not just nothing, they're particles. So if we go through those, and they are negative particles, and our Earth is spinning, and look this up, because here's another thing for you that nobody will tell you, is that our Earth is covered with magnetic stripes. Look them up. Ocean magnetic stripes. Plus, minus, plus, minus, plus, minus. And as we spin through the negative particles that are ether in space coming at us, we are literally a motor. A spinning set of these magnetic lines through an ocean of oncoming negative particles creates exactly the identical magnetic field that a motor would. So our magnetic field is literally the effect of a motor. Now, what does that mean? Our Earth is 70 degrees at the Earth, approximately. Let's go with 70 degrees. The magnetosphere is way out at the atmosphere in this ether. And what does that mean? It means it's scrubbing out there, not at the Earth. It's scrubbing out there. And what does that mean? It means it's 56,000 degrees out there. Why isn't it cold? If it was as cold as space, there's nothing out there. It would get colder and colder. No, it's rubbing there through this negative particles, these magnetic stripes spinning, ripping through the atmosphere, through the universe on the arm of the Milky Way. It creates more and more heat if this is denser space. Now, how can we test this? Because we can test it. I want to know what is the graph and the chart of the magnetosphere temperature. Do they have any chart to show? Has it increased? If it has increased, that heat is coming down, not going up. You can't. I mean, carbon dioxide, I hate it. I'm not saying I like it. And I would get away from 100%. And the light experiments that we were doing with a Venturi could create plasma. It creates plasma. Absolutely, no question, it creates plasma. Could you do it with heavy particles? And I say yes. And the reason is because a Venturi crushes the particles together. And it does it passively because it's just a device that is a wedge-shaped funnel where these particles are forced to confront each other exactly the way they're forced in a magnetic bottle. So what does that do? It forces them into each other's regions. They react violently and they become disassociated. And that's what my guess is, the heavy particles, because I'm working with light. Light is a single particle. It is a dipole. If you go on, you got to go up to Mudfossil University. No, that's Mudfossil University on YouTube. And I also have Mudfossils with an S.com. And there'll be a new book coming out soon. Is it free? It's going to be free. It's going to be a field guide, how to find, the whole thing, how it all started, how the process works. It's only going to be 15, 20 pages. I'm not a big writer. It'll be seriously, it'll be almost textbook. And then from there, we will all discover how these things are really constructed and so forth. Anyway, that's about all I have to say, I guess.
Yeah, well, we have about 3 more minutes.
Then I got a lot more to say. No.
So, the thing is like, what if like the Earth is like, I don't know, listening to you talk and just stuff I think about, is that, I think about like maybe, the Earth is like an atom and it's traveling up, in someone's lung.
You can't discount anything anymore, Bridgette. I mean, you cannot discount anything. When I tell you that Saturn's moon, Iapetus, is a tendon antithesis ball, look it up. Just go look. And I have the video about what tendon antithesis balls are, and I have millions of pictures of those things, and there's no question with this. I've checked out the chemistry and all that. the structures inside them. And the structures in the tendon balls, they change from your elbows to your knees to your legs to your stomach to your shoulders. They're all different structures inside. Some of them have just a hollow core of sand, literally sand, silicon. Some of them have a webbing inside and a structure, and they are the source of those Dropa stones. All right? If you go look, I just did a video called Dropa Stones Solved or something like that. It's about the Dropa stones. And if you use my name or Mudfossil University and these different tendon balls and this and that, you'll find a lot more than you will be able to handle, I can tell you that.
Yeah, no, seriously, you'll find a lot more than you could have ever possibly imagined. It'll take you. Yeah.
Yeah, once you realize that everything is wrong. Once I realized, Bridgette, that these things, the Earth is literally, every molecule was alive. I said to my wife one day, I said, this is crazy. After a year or so, I said, I did so many rocks that I had to fill a 200-foot drainage ditch just with the extra ones. And I have a 4-car garage and I got 1 car in it. Because I get so many rocks. But it was all, I said, every rock I find is alive. I have a collection of every single body part virtually, and in every different type of decomposition and every different mineral process, from geothermal to acidic to, just clear solutions, where they literally turn into a piece of meat. I have boxes of you could eat them.
Thanks, Roger. We're at the end. Thank you so much. Go to Mudfossil University and check it out. Thanks, Roger. Have a great day.
I love you all. God bless you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message. Welcome to Revolution Radio, where you, the listeners, are in charge. Here at Revolution Radio, we present 48 broadcast hours of news and information each and every day. Revolution Radio never sleeps. Revolution Radio is worldwide and borderless information. Revolution Radio is also commercial-free. Revolution Radio is supported 100% by you, the listeners. And that's why we appeal to you to donate and support this station and its expenses. You can support us in many available options like archive subscriptions, our seed pack selections, or even my woodworking store. And we also even have Revolution Radio's swag at the Revolution Radio Zazzle store, in which you can get t-shirts, coffee cups, even a baby onesie. Or you can just plain donate to the cause. We cannot continue without your support, and your support is what helps pay the bills. So please, if you wish us to continue, please stop by our station support page and drop a dime on us. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps. Is your data safe? Do you have the necessary information to assist you in confidently living through just about any survival situation? Is survival and gardening, off-grid living, medical knowledge, or even natural or man-made EMPs on your list of personal concerns? Do you have your documents and your personal information in a safe place in your hands where you know where it is? Well, check out our preloaded EMP-proof thumb drive. Over 3 gigs of survival documents and how-tos, plus the USDA offline food preservation website, and much, much more, including a surprise bonus we just can't tell you about here. With plenty of room left over to store your most important documents. Imagine if a megavirus or a computer failure took out your bank or all